Hey, Diana, did you know that making new habits is easy?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
I'm a little under the weather and still not used to number one. I will get used to it, though.
You know, so we're sitting here on a Monday. We normally record on a Thursday, sort of.
Yep,
So,
that is true.
Which leads me really. So, what did you do this weekend to get sick?
I think there's something going around this office. I think it's your office. No offense.
I think it might just be self-inflicted. So, maybe you got your jiggy on this weekend and
I had
just now
fun.
paying the price for it.
I did have a great weekend. Despite being sick and under the weather. Did you have a good weekend, Mark?
Yes, I took my boat out in a storm, and we started singing the theme song from Gilligan's Island, and but we managed to make it back.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, there are no unknown islands in my neck of the woods. We do have two islands. We have Pine Island, we have Goat Island, but
Are there goats on Goat Island?
there used to be goats on Goat Island.
Oh, that's why it's named that.
On Pine Island, they're just a bunch of really big ants. So anyway,
So no pines.
yeah, no, we don't stay there. Anyway, we digress. But yes, we both had a good weekend. We're actually recording on a Monday.
We are. And,
Why?
because you're leaving town again this weekend.
Yes, I'm leaving town to go to Vegas. You're leaving town to go where?
Family retreat.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so all good things before and actually I'm really excited about today. Today is my outline, and I really think that we should have our listeners guess whose outline it is based on the podcast, and maybe send them some socks or something from you if they guess it correctly. But today is one of my outlines about a book we had to read for Atticus. We both read it. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Had you read it before our Atticus assignment?
No, as a matter of fact, I had avoided it for a long time because I was just sick and tired of habits books because I'd read several, and I'm like, I'm hopeless. I'm just going to do what I want to do. Habits be damned.
Well, I
In other words, I'm
agree
just
with
gonna
all that.
live with all my bad
I
habits.
agree with all that. But I had avoided it because I just really kind of felt like I developed habits easily. I think it's a high C thing. So I really struggled with this book because it just made sense to me as a high C, and I really didn't understand how it could be applied to non-high C people. And then I decided we needed to be true Atticus students and workshop Atomic Habits as one of our podcast episodes.
So you avoided the book because you thought
It was obvious.
you thought it was not worthy of you. I avoided the book because I thought I was not worthy of the book. So coming at it from both ends of
I don't know which one of us has worse ego problems there, but yes, sir. We both avoided the book, but I thought that it was very beneficial. What did you think about the book?
Actually,
Mark?
I liked it because it kind of just made four simple points.
Which we're going to talk about today.
Which we're going to talk about. I won't step on the lead, but it wasn't one of these 57-part systems that you got to get all of it right, which I think was the last habit book I read, and that's where I didn't like it.
Yeah. Which one was that one? Well, never mind. Don't name names.
I don't mind calling it out if I could remember it, but I didn't think enough of it to remember it, so...
Well, I liked the book because, and obviously, yes, the 4 simple habits, but, it just made sense to me in terms of where I'm at in my career. And it talked a lot about, well, at the beginning, there was one of the key points that I remember was the concept of, quote unquote, marginal gains. So basically, the aggregation of marginal gains is what Claire talks about, and how the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. And in a similar way, and today why I wanted to workshop your calendar, he talks about how bad habits repeat themselves again and again. And Clear says, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, which, I mean, that's basically high C love language right there.
Right. So the key point that I remember from the book is the point that it illustrated pretty well, which was the reason we make bad decisions, the reason we develop bad habits is because they're easy in the moment, whereas good habits and good decisions typically tend to be hard in the moment, but better for us in the long run. And so as human beings, we are very short-run creatures. You know, we grew up thinking that we would be getting eaten by the saber-toothed tiger at any moment, so we were living for the moment. We weren't living for the long run through the first 100, 200,000 years of our existence on this planet. Nowadays, we tend to live, or should, to be successful, we should be living for the long term, which means you have to create a different set of habits that are focused on the long term. You know, the common ones like save 10% of your salary as opposed to go blowing it on the weekend, you know, or whatever. So in other words, making the harder decisions, the tougher choices, but for the greater good.
And that's a perfect segue, because why I wanted to workshop your calendar, Mark, is because I feel like your calendar and time management, as you take a deep, deep sigh, has become a habit, a bad habit. Would you agree?
I totally agree.
So what is the problem, Mark, with your calendar? Because we've been talking about it on this podcast for nearly as long as we've had a podcast, for about a year. We've talked about your calendar problems and your mismanagement of your calendar. So really, what's going on?
Well, I would first blame somebody else rather than blame me, because that's the easy out. People parachute into my calendar.
People?
Employees.
Parachute?
Yes. Like, they'll just drop things on my calendar. They see open white space in my calendar, and they drop it on my calendar.
What if I said that I looked at your calendar for the last 2 weeks or 2 months in preparation for this this episode, and that is not true? On the aggregate, it does happen, but on the aggregate.
So what I would say is, if you spent 2 months preparing for one podcast, that is an incredible waste of time.
I looked at, let me rephrase, because I think
not that we don't love you listeners, but we're not putting 2 months into an episode.
Let me rephrase, because I think the cold medicine's getting to my head. I looked at your past 2 months calendar. You're the calendar of your past 2 months, and that's just not true. People don't parachute into your days. On the whole, that's not what's happening.
Okay, I will give you the opportunity to correct me when the time comes.
The time is now.
Oh.
So I will say that on the whole, that's just not what's happening. 80% of the time, if we're doing the 80-20, that's not what's happening with your calendar.
All right.
And I think today that's what we're going to workshop, is what's going on with Mark's calendar. Because to use Clear's language, I think we're at a point, Mark, where, this is a quote from the book, when we repeat 1% errors day after day by replicating poor decisions, duplicating tiny mistakes, and rationalizing little excuses, our small choices compound into toxic results.
Right to the heart.
So I think that really for everybody that's listening, that's using any kind of justification or rationalization on your calendar, and why you can't get a hold of your time and your day, and why it's just so important, let's just revisit why in the very essence of this podcast. You know, we talk a lot about, especially in the very beginning, how we don't want to create a prison. Your world is very, let's call it now, reactive. You don't know your calendar until you see it.
Okay, I'll have to agree with that, even though I don't want to, but
you don't feel very in control of it.
No.
And I think that that's really the hard part for you. That's what we've talked about countless times in various iterations and various topics of this podcast, is how not having control of your time, especially for law firm owners, can really lead to burnout, and is not the point of this podcast.
Right. Well, the problem is when you're the leader, everybody wants a piece of your time. The most valuable commodity that you have is the gift or the sharing of your time. And everybody wants a piece of it. Everybody wants something. You know, at lunch today, one of my employees said, Mark, could I get you for 15 minutes tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something. I have no idea what it is. I don't know if it's important. I don't know if it's not important, but it's like in 15 minutes always turns into 30. So every chunk of time has an unproductive front end and back end. So it's always expands, whatever it is. It's like everybody wants just a piece of you for whatever reason.
And I think that's really what I think you're suffering from, is that your calendar has these little maybe blocks of time, these 15 minutes which turn into 30 minutes. So if you're looking, I look at Marc's Solidify calendar and there's no quote unquote white space. There's no empty space for you to think or to really move your big rocks ahead. And I think that's really what you struggle with, if I may.
Right. It is true. And of course, the temptation then is to let work bleed in to your personal life, bleed into your weekends, bleed into your evenings with your family. And I will say that in spite of all of my many bad habits, I do pretty much protect my family time. Like, I don't work on weekends, except maybe Sunday night I will start planning my week. But other than that, I don't pick Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. I don't pick up the computer. I don't start working on things. In most evenings, I do not. And if I do, I get a really cross-eyed look from my wife. I get and I'm just like, okay, I've just got to look at something real quick. I promise I'll be 15 minutes. But, I get the look. So we know that there are boundaries set up at home.
And I think that that's very important. And maybe we'll do a little compare and contrasting from a CEO to a COO perspective, and definitely where I am in my life, because I work every weekend. I work at nights. I work in the mornings before I come into work. Now I do, just because of my summer schedule. But I get a lot more kind of flexibility than actually, I don't know that you give me a lot of flexibility, so maybe we won't talk too much about that. But I get a lot of flexibility from you, and you know that. And so the trade-off is that I do boot up at home, and I'm in a great position now with my family where I can do that. But
you have you not just have different home life circumstances. You have a working husband, and your husband probably at the same time you open up your laptop, he's probably opened up his laptop.
Yep, and there's a very much an understanding of where we are. And so that is much harder for us when we are trying to draw those boundaries. But
my wife doesn't even own a laptop.
But we still love you, Miss Tina Whitehead. So what we're going to talk about today is really trying to get a hold of your priorities, Marc, because as we've done on a prior podcast, though I don't know the number, is where we talked about it's not time management, it's focus management. And so we're going to revisit that using the Atomic Habits framework today to try and get a hold of Marc's calendar.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right, Diana. So let's get to the meat of this. This is your outline, so you get to lead this part.
Well, so for those of you who have not read Atomic Habits, the point of this podcast will not be to give you all the great. I do encourage you to read the book. I think Marc and I would both say.
This was a very readable book.
Yeah.
And I did it on Audible, and it was a very, some Audibles, the narrator sucks and the cadence is off and blah, blah, blah. This was an extremely well done Audible version, very easy to listen to. Not that long, was in my 6-hour strike zone. So,
so I think
recommend that version, but
we highly recommend the book, but this podcast will not be in the nitty gritty book report type thing of the book, because
we've banned book reports.
Well, but for this one, it just didn't work because I wanted to really kind of talk to you about your calendar. So we're going to use this as a therapy session for Diana.
Excellent.
So the Clear uses Atomic Habits, and he talks about 4 laws of atomic habits. And so the first one is to make it obvious, right? So basically when situation X arises, you're going to do Y. You're trying to build a habit. And so he talks about habit stacking, and it's a strategy you can use to pair a new habit with a current habit. And so we're going to try to figure out how we can use the first law, Marc, of making it obvious to figure out how we can work with your calendar. Because as Clear says, disciplined people are better at structuring their lives in a way that does not require heroic willpower and self-control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations. You know, he talks about how like people who can't get into the habit of working out, to put your running shoes or your workout shoes right by your bed or right by the coffee pot or whatever it is you do first thing in the morning, so that it's real easy for you to step into that new habit. So I was trying to think of some ways, Marc, that we could make it obvious for you to get a better handle of your calendar. And the first suggestion was to maybe audit your calendar weekly. So you use the Atticus Planner.
Yes, I do.
And in the Atticus Planner, which we get complimentary as Atticus students.
Complimentary, yes.
Do they have a section where you can kind of audit your prior week?
They do have a reflection of the weekend. So when the weekend comes along in the calendar, you can do a weekly reflection on what worked that week, what didn't work that week, which I think would fit quite nicely into what you're talking about, auditing the calendar, like what worked about the calendar, what crashed and burned.
Yeah, and so I think that that's something that would be a really easy habit to just like maybe step into before you start planning your week. So, you know, you already do the Sunday thing. Right. So the new habit that we're going to build, the Sunday thing, which is just to remind our listeners, what do you do on Sunday, Marc?
So Sunday evening, I will break out the planner. I will look at my calendar for the week, and I will start planning. The way the Atticus Planner works is you're supposed to pick out the top 10 things you want to accomplish for the week. You know, they could be, and then you also have a section where you can list off what are called your tolerations, things that are going on in your world that you don't like, but you're just tolerating them. So you can also knock off a few tolerations. You know, I was tolerating that my driveway looked awful, and I finally knocked off that toleration that I broke down and actually hired somebody to power wash my driveway because I realized I was never going to get to it.
Yeah.
You know, that was just one of those tolerations. You know,
Yep.
Not a big to-do, not an important top 10 list for the week, but it was one of those kind of tolerations. So you kind of have a list of your main 10 goals, and then you have a section where you can knock off some of your tolerations, and then I think there's another section for health and fitness as well. So they've added that in there. So
And there's probably a cash flow focus. We've talked about
there is
that
a cash
before.
flow focuser, yes.
But on the kind of debrief from the prior week, do you do that now?
I do not.
And is there a reason why?
I just never thought about it.
So we're going to think about that today, Marc, and we're going to try Clear's strategy of habit stacking. So again, we're going to try and build one habit on top of the other. So you already have one really great habit of planning your week. So what do you think about thinking about your prior week? What worked, what didn't work? That's very simple questions.
So deconstructing your prior week to figure out what went right, what didn't go right.
I mean, I think I don't know how Atticus does it, but I think that would be a really good way to kind of figure out what really did go wrong with your time management, like your focus management last week.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way they phrase it, just what worked, what didn't. They keep it very simple. What worked last week, what didn't work last week. So something about my calendar, if it didn't work, that's one of the things that didn't work.
And I think that would be a good way to maybe get a hold of your calendar. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts?
All right. I'm game. Great idea.
So one of the other things that I thought of when I was working on this outline was also what you taught me about time blocking and how you have 2 calendars and using the colors. So that would be another good way to use. So for our listeners, talk to us about how you teach time blocking and setting up 2 calendars and using that to help you with focus.
Correct. So now I have the firm calendar on Litify, of which everybody has access to, so they can see what Marc is doing, what time Marc has available. What I have taught people to do in the past is to go and, as a secondary calendar, is set up a second non-connected, and that's the key. It can't be connected. calendar, and the way I did it was on Outlook. Now, I will say that I have since moved over and just used the Atticus Planner, but a lot of people don't have the Atticus Planner. So Outlook is everybody has Outlook. Everybody has the calendar function in Outlook, to my knowledge. So I go in there, and if you set it up correctly in a one-way feed, everything on your firm calendar will feed over to Outlook, but everything you put on Outlook doesn't necessarily feed over to the firm if you set it up correctly. Mm-hmm. Don't ask me how the magic fairies work. They're techie people who do this for me, but I do know that that is possible. So therefore, I use the Outlook calendar to then fill in the white space, block in times during the white space that I have throughout the week. All right, I'm going to block out 2 hours over here that I want to work on this project. I'm going to block out 2 hours over here where I want to, work on my finances and stuff like that. And I just start filling in those chunks. And then I start color coding them. So different colors mean different things. So, for example, yellow may mean an appointment or with staff. Green may be quiet, productive time where I'm not to be bothered by anything. You can come up with all sorts of different color codes. I just came up with, I like pretty colors. You should see the string lights I have in my backyard. They used to be all white. I got some new multicolored bulbs, and so now my backyard looks like a carnival because I have these pretty little colored lights. But I just think the colors are kind of pretty. It's just something fun to do because you can do that with an Outlook. You just cut or whatever the function is, the paint function or whatever the function is, the color fill function. I will say that this is how I teach it to other people to do. And I think it works really well. Then you can print it off and you can hang a copy of it on your door so everybody can look at it and see what's going on, how you have your week planned. Or you can give it to your accountability partner or your assistant or whomever you've got that's supposed to know what your calendar looks like and will help you protect that calendar. I will say I don't do that anymore personally, even though I still teach it to do that way, because I've now gone pretty much to the Atticus Planner, which you can do the same thing. Just in a slightly different way. They do it on a day-by-day basis as opposed to a week view basis, but it's really the same thing. But that's how I teach. That's how I teach time blocking. And that is the problem, is that people will parachute into my blocked off time.
Well, and I think that...
And I allow it to happen. That's really the problem. I allow it to happen.
You do. And so what I think that some of our attorneys have taken to doing is just kind of merging that time blocking calendar with the public Litify calendar. So it really does look like they are unavailable. And it's a push and a pull because, obviously we have people needing to schedule client calls with them and so on and so forth, hearings. And if they're constantly unavailable because of time blocks, then it's like, okay, well, how are we really going to get them to do, the work that we need them to do? Right. So it is a push and a pull. But I think that would be one way to make sure that you did not get parachuted on is if you had that blocked in public on that calendar time.
Right.
But I do think that what you said about making it quote unquote pretty is exactly what Clear's talking about in the second law, which is to make it attractive. The strategy there is to pair an action you want to do with an action that you need to do. And so just really, really making it quote unquote attractive to you, pretty for you, just is something that I think makes it a lot more easy to develop that habit.
So I'll give you an example of how I did this until the past few months where I've fallen out of the habit. What did I want to do? I wanted to leave. What did I need to do? I needed to work out. So I combined the habit of leaving, or the cue of leaving the office, with working out. So I would start at about 3:45 and I would start preparing to pack up my stuff and change into my gym clothes because my goal was to be at the gym by 4 o'clock, which my gym is just up the street. And I paired those two things together. Yay, I get to leave the office. I've been here all day. Not that I don't love you people, but at some point I want to leave. So the joy of leaving with the, not so much joy of actually going to a gym and sweating for a little bit and working out. And then I paired that with the joy at the end was a lovely loco for coconut protein shake, which is delicious, at the end of my workout. So for my ride home, I'm sucking on that delicious. So see, I'm putting these prompts in place to get me to go do the thing I really don't want to do, which is go work out after a long day of work.
Well, and don't you usually do a stretch lab every once in a while?
So every Wednesday at 5, that's different. I go to stretch lab, which is actually a nice, pleasant experience, as I like to call it. It's forced yoga.
But I thought that you did a workout before your.
I try to. So I try to go.
That's another way to reinforce that habit.
I try to go lift weights before I go to stretch lab, and I've been given permission by my therapist to do that because in the past I thought she didn't want to really deal with a sweaty person. She goes, "You're okay, Mark. That's okay. You can do that." So I got permission from my therapist to go work out ahead of time. I don't really sweat that much, honestly.
Okay, we're digressing, Mark.
So off the mark
one of the things, though, I think that is like you hit the nail on the head there, is rewarding yourself for doing what you don't want to do. So like one of the things that Clear suggests in the book is, I mean, if you do the thing, then get yourself a coffee or go for a walk, for example, while you're doing maybe that BD call or business development call that you've been putting off, or that networking call. Do a walk with it if it's a nice day outside. It is currently July in Houston, so it is not probably something you would choose. But otherwise, treat yourself to a coffee or a Coco Loco thing.
Loco for coconut with extra protein. That's how you order it. Medium.
And then so we're moving to the third law from Clear that he said, make it easy. I liked this when I wrote it down because it reminded me of what you tell us all the time. But Clear quotes Voltaire and says that the best is the enemy of the good. Do you know what I thought about?
I always thought it was the perfect was the enemy of the good, but same concept.
Yep,
yes.
Yep. And you've always told us, you know what I'm about to say, never let perfection get in the way of progress.
Right.
That is such a Markism. But Clear talks about the difference between being in motion versus taking action, and I think that just resonates with so many leaders. And I think especially as a CEO, with you have a lot of conflicting responsibilities and just demands on your time.
Right. So making it easy. This was a thought I had the other day. Here's a conflict that I have, and you can help me work through this since this is a workshop. I am really trying to up the dress code here at the office by example because it has gotten really bad. I mean, t-shirts and cargo shorts, like clients don't come in the office anymore. Somebody cares. So I like to dress up, put on my sport coats, put on my dress shirt, put on my slacks. The problem with that is, and I know today, I had a physical today, okay? I wasn't going to wear all that today when I'm having to get naked in front of a doctor.
Oh my gosh, Mark.
Okay, apart from today, I try to set the standard, but the problem is now I got to carry a big gym bag. Wouldn't it be so much easier if I just came to work dressed, ready to go work out? Mm-hmm. It would be a lot easier. And I know a lot of people that now think that way, so I have this conflict in my head. I'm trying to lead by example, but yet wouldn't it be great if I just got up in the morning and put on my workout clothes, and so I'd be ready for my workout and just make life easier? It would make me more likely to go work out because I will occasionally skip a workout if I'm not feeling it. So
Yep. So, one of the things so just to introduce the third law of making it easy by Clear, he says that the key is to start with repetition. And I loved this part of the book where he says that habits are formed based on frequency, not time, because, the common question that he always gets is, well, how long is it going to take me to build a new habit? And Clear says, okay, it's not about how long, it's about how many does it take to form a new habit. So what you're trying to really do, especially when you're trying to start a new habit, is the law of least effort. So like, for example, like just for you, maybe come up with an ideal week calendar template, quote unquote, ideal week. I know why that's impossible for you now. But another thing that Claire mentions is the 2-minute rule. So basically when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to start that new habit.
Okay.
And I really like that because anybody can do anything really. I mean, a plank is really hard for 2 minutes, but like most of the time,
For
2
you,
minutes is really, oh my gosh, Mark.
I can knock planks out like you wouldn't believe.
Okay, we're going to do.
Put you
we
to
should
shame
do
right here.
A plank competition one day, and then we'll really
we're gonna
see
throw down.
whose abs are stronger. So what we're really talking about is just if you're going to do something, start it for just 2 minutes because most people can wrap their minds around. Okay, well I can plan my ideal week, or I can, for you, Mark, maybe that's I can do my little weekly debrief 2 minutes before, in 2 minutes. That's easy, while I'm doing my weekly planning anyway. And one of the things actually that you did that you're really proud of at the end of last year when you were trying to get a hold of your calendar, not that I'm trying to rub it in that you have been struggling with this for 7 months now, but you put production time on your calendar.
Every Tuesday and Thursday, I basically block out the entire afternoon as production time.
And how is that going for you?
Terribly, because everybody knows it's not a real time block, and they will still block shit in there.
What if I told you I looked back at your last 2 months and that is just not true?
That's totally true. They just that doesn't mean they put it on the calendar. They just walk right in.
Okay, well then that I'm not sitting here watching your office door. So, but it is just not true on the calendar that's not true.
Hey,
but
Mark, you got 15 minutes. How many times have I heard that?
one of the things that Clear would probably suggest is to not do quote unquote production.
You keep saying
time.
we're talking about James Clear. I'm sorry, you
The
lost
author.
me somewhere in there.
The author, we're going to do show and share. The
Okay.
author of the book,
James Clear.
James Clear.
Okay.
So he would say don't use production time. Be very intentional about what you're doing in that time. So maybe when you're planning your week, Mark, instead of so this is Mark's new habit. We're building it as we go. We're workshopping this like true Atticus students. You're now going to do your weekly debrief from last week, see what worked, what didn't work. Then you're going to plan your Big 10, look at your tolerations, and then you're going to rename your production time into very specific blocks of what you're going to do during that time. How does that sound, Mark?
Okay, it sounds perfect, and that's how I would coach it to be done. And it is, in a vague sense, how I sort of do it because I do it in my planner. The problem is that I don't put it on my public calendar that way. My public calendar just says production time.
And if we did it on your public calendar,
Because quite frankly, it's not everybody's business what I'm working on at the moment.
but you can make that private. You can rename it to where only you see what you're working on. You can make it in 90-minute blocks so it looks very intentional so nobody crashes in your 4-hour amorphous production time. But it can be blocked into 90, 30, 60, however long you want to do it. Make it private, the name of it. And this is a 2-minute strategy that you can incorporate under the third law of making it easy. What do you think?
All right. I'm all for it. I will give it a shot.
No, will you? That's more than I thought I would actually get, listeners.
Okay. Well, yeah, who's gonna back check me on this?
I will.
Okay.
Obviously. I mean,
All
and guys, we'll do, we should do this in 4 episodes. We're going to see how Mark's doing with his calendar on Atomic Habits. We'll do a debrief for you guys
Debrief
in that
in
final
four
segment in
episodes.
4 weeks. But which leads us though into the fourth law from the book, which is to make it satisfying. Clear says
Ooh,
that the
the
cardinal
protein shake. That's where it's
that's
satisfying.
where you're going to make that one apply to every single law.
Love me some protein shakes.
So the fourth law of making it satisfying, Clear says that the cardinal rule of behavioral change is that what is immediately rewarded is repeated, and what is immediately punished is avoided. So basically, we're more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience is satisfying. It's exactly what you talked about at the beginning of this episode, Mark, where we talked about how basically delayed gratification is just not really in our thing. It's a learned behavior for us as modern humans.
So you're saying every time I reach for the donut, I have to do self-flagellation or something? Punishment?
No, but well, maybe the whole Coco Loco thing is that really healthy? How much sugar is in that?
Protein shake. It's nothing but fruit, milk, and yogurt. And
I think there's
protein.
going to be a lot of sugar in that,
Well,
Mark. I
it's
think you should ask your
natural sugars.
smoothie barista.
Do not judge me.
I'm not judging you. Is it a satisfying habit which got you to the gym?
Yes.
Okay, well then there you go. You are habit stacking. So Claire would be very happy with your new
40 grams of protein after a workout. So.
with your new habit. But basically that's exactly what he's saying. So let's just say that Marc is doing all these things that we've talked about today during our workshop of the book Atomic Habits. He's going to do his debrief. He's going to change his production time into small little snippets they can be private, of what you're working on with Claude in that particular moment. And so you're going to have very finite, dedicated times during your week, so people will not parachute into your day. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the week, you're going to reward yourself with something because you're going to try and make it satisfying.
So I'm going to ask Claude, what are my top 10 things I need to do this week?
And I think I hope you and Claude have that lovely conversation. But, one of the things that I think would also be a great way to do that would be to treat yourself, obviously, with maybe something other than a Coco Loco, but to also think about what worked that week. So at the end of the week, before you're doing your Sunday, what worked. If you maintain your boundaries, I think that's a huge win for you. I think in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about what this really looks like. Also, I'm going to share how it looks like for me, some things that I've done.
Yeah, let's see how you walk the walk.
I will absolutely talk about that in our final segment.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
And we're back. All right, Diana, you got to bring us home here. You promised that you would tell us how you walk the walk. Not just talk the talk here.
Yep. So on this podcast, I've talked a little bit about my think time. Have I? I think I have. It was one of those things when we were both getting coached by Atticus, our goddess Nora. Nora coached us for 2 or 3 years, and it was very instrumental. But she kept telling me that I needed "quote unquote" think time in my calendar, and I was like, okay, that's cute. Okay, but she wouldn't let up. And so she eventually just one coaching session, she's like, okay, Diana, you're going to put think time on your calendars right now before we move forward during our coaching session. So I put 60 minutes on my calendar, and then I got to it and I didn't know what to do with my 60 minutes. I think I worked through the first 2 or 3 because it's like, what else are you going to do? But once I figured out a structure of what I was supposed to do during that think time, now it's my most protected time that I very rarely, I was traveling this last time, but that I very rarely schedule over, and that's very kind of sacrosanct for me and it's how I keep my whole personal, my professional life, how I keep myself and my goals, like just all spinning on all the different plates. And so now I have a structure. I literally have a folder, and it's got a little Velcro thing, so it's not a folder where things fall out of it. I know which markers to use, which papers. I have multiple copies that I print out because I do an exercise at the beginning of my think time to kind of assess where I'm at and my satisfaction with all the different parts of my life. I pull out my quarterly goals, my personal goals, essentially my great life, that the Atticus exercise that we do. I pull out the quarterly goals that you and I have set out way before then. If it's at the end of the quarter, I look at what I haven't accomplished on any of those things, and I try to figure out where I want to move forward. And that's how, whenever I come to you and I'm like, hey, Marc, this is what I'm working on this next quarter. Tell me what you think. And this is how I come with those things. That's how I figure out essentially, what I want to do next. What trip am I going to take next quarter? Which flights do I need to buy next? That's always fun. And how I keep my quote unquote great life moving forward. And I don't really, I have some tolerations. Do you have all this on paper? Is it on a computer? Is it on some sort of software? What is this? All the things. I tend to have it in a folder, so it's all printed for me because I can then take it wherever I need to go. There was a thought at some point that I would one day, go to a coffee shop and be able to do that, and that's just not realistic for where I'm at now. I need to be at least somewhat present in the office for most of the time when I do this. But my great life it's a living document, so I break it down by quarter, and as I'm accomplishing the things that I said for the quarter, I color coded in green. You know, this is exactly what I do. I do this for your business plan. When I've accomplished the things, I color coded in green. Things I've decided to not do that quarter, I strike through, or mark it in red or yellow, depending on where they are. And then I mark my to-dos for that quarter. And so it's not necessarily, and it was building a habit over time, doing one thing, you know, just making it so easy. I put the markers that I need. They're my markers that I keep with my folder. The printouts are there. Make it attractive. I also like the colors, so I have a whole bunch of colored markers on my wheel of life that I do, and it makes it very pretty and attractive. And it's very obvious. It's just right there on my calendar, and I know exactly what I'm supposed to do during my think time.
Such a high C.
I know, but you know what? That's why you hired me. So, Marc, one of the things that I think about, since you mentioned that I'm a high C, is that I do, and I
The
know
compliant rule follower, yes.
I am. Conscientiousness is what I think is what they call it.
Conscientious,
so we
compliant
haven't
rule follower.
explained it. So a high C on the DISC test, DISC test, which we talk a lot about on this
Right.
podcast, meaning I love my rules. I don't think that they're burdensome or whatever by any stretch of the imagination.
They give you comfort. Rules
They
give you
do.
comfort.
I think they give me freedom. I mean, it's exactly what Clear says. Like, I really don't think about it, a lot of things now, because the structures are just there. But I've always thought that, you know, Clear makes it sound so easy to set up new habits, but I'm a high C. I know you're supposed to be a high C, but let's
I'm
pretend.
not a high C.
Okay, good. Oh, great. I'm so
not
glad.
a high C. I'm a high S,
High SC.
which I still don't even know what an S is, other than I'm just sort of steady.
Yeah,
And
you're steady Eddie.
I'm a steady Eddie.
I like that. But
You
that's
know,
cool.
well, you know, whatever. Steady wins the race.
Yeah, but for low C's, I was trying to think of some strategies for our listeners, for people who are like, okay, well, I'm not Diana, so how can I make atomic habits apply for me?
Well, so you're looking dead at me. So I would start with make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought, you know, to create a new habit, you probably have to kill an old habit. So if my old habit is I go home after work every day and not work out, I need to kill that habit and create a new habit. So in other words, the new habit, let's say, is to work out after work every day. Okay, fine. All right, so you may not think about it this way, but that means you're killing an old habit, which is I go home after work every day, or I go to happy hour after work every day. You know, or me, now I have this weird fantasy because I know a lot of successful people that work out in the mornings, and I just don't because I'm not a morning person, but I have this fantasy that one day maybe I will begin to work out in the mornings. Well, what does that mean? That means I got to get up earlier. I got to change that habit. Well, how do I get up early? Well, I have to change the habit of going to bed at 11:30 every night, you know. So it's sometimes changing habits. It's a series of habits. It's a sequence of habits that you have to change to get to ultimately where you want to be. But I think the key is number one, you have to identify the habit that needs to be killed. And I think that's a lot of times people skip that part. And then you got to figure out a way to make it easy. How do you make it simple? Exactly, like putting your workout shoes and your gym shorts next to your bed, so when you wake up in the morning, they're right there for you.
Yeah, and I also like the idea where Claire's just like a reward yourself. I mean, and to build upon what you were just talking about that we didn't talk about during today's podcast. You know, Clear talks a lot about making it part of your identity. So, you know, for using your example, it would be to say that I am a person that works out in the morning, and that would help you work out in the morning, you know. So if I wanted
It's an attitude adjustment.
Exactly. Well, and it's a mindset shift.
Mindset shift.
And
Yeah,
it's
that's a better way to say it. It's a mindset shift.
And it's an identity shift to something that you want. And so giving yourself immediate reward for doing something might be a good way to also build that habit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to, if you're going to work out in the morning, then obviously you still get your Coco Loco, whatever. But if you work out in the afternoon, then maybe you don't get your Coco Loco.
It's loco for coconut, excuse me.
I like
Medium
Coco Loco better.
with extra protein, okay?
And
Get
then,
it right.
It's Coco Locos. So one of the final things that I wanted to challenge you, Marc, as you revamp your calendar in order to get more control over your time, and basically your focus is what my planner calls a big three. Does Atticus have the big three?
You're gonna have to help me out here. I'm not. Maybe it does, but I'm not sure it phrases it that way.
So, I mean, my planner, which I use the Full Focus Planner, I get no royalties or anything from that, but just so you guys have a full frame of reference of what I'm talking about.
That is a brand name.
That is a brand name.
They probably
Full
trademarked
Focus
that
Planner.
and everything. So.
So Full Focus Planner TM.
TM.
Much better?
Yes.
Okay. So what you would do is you take your weekly goals, you plan your week. They also encourage you to do a debrief from the prior week, which I also do not do. So don't do as I say, or don't do as I do as I say. So, but then after you do your weekly goals or your plan, you put them into each day. So then each day has, quote unquote, the big three. What big three things do you want to accomplish today?
Gotcha.
Yes, you do
Atticus,
that?
absolutely, Atticus does that. So the way our daily planner is structured is you have your top three things you want to accomplish for the day. And then below that, it has a secondary list for these are the second three things you would like to accomplish today, assuming you have time. And then after that, it's what is the one health building habit that you want to promote or do or act on today. So you have a health habit. And then you have what's the top marketing habit that you want to do today, because they break that out because they feel that Atticus is very much feels that marketing is all about touching other people on a regular and consistent basis.
That makes sense.
They break that out from, say, advertising, which is pay a crap ton of money to Google for pay-per-click. So they think you should look at least one marketing touch or marketing habit per day as well. So that's how the day is broken out. And then you have a daily reflection if you want to use it, which I never have.
So do you use your big three?
I do absolutely use the big three.
So do you accomplish your big three more often than not?
I would give myself a solid C+ on that. You know, what's this? That's about a 75.
Yes, sir.
I would say, yeah, I'm
77.
Yeah, something in that range. Depending on what school you went to. You know, let's don't get into the junior college that you got a degree from. So
Go Baylor Bears. So okay, Mark.
green. What an awful color for a school.
To recap, what we're going to do to maybe get better control of your calendar, Mark. Mm-hmm. Some few make it easy strategies. You're going to start doing your Sunday debrief. That's 2 minutes that you can have it stack on top of what you're already doing with your Sunday planning. Mm-hmm. And then once you know what you're going to do, then you're going to rename your production time, your big block of 4 hours, into very finite
straight into the firm
goals.
calendar.
Straight into the firm calendar, so nobody can parachute into your day. And you're going to rename it, and you can even keep it private, so nobody knows what you're working on with you and Claude. And then, maybe do the big three with more intentionality is what I would argue.
Right. Well, so let's go from 75% of the time to 90% of the time.
I think that would be great. And so listeners...
Let's go from C+ to A-. Let's move it there.
Perfect. And so that's our goal with our new strategies using the book Atomic Habits. And in about 4 episodes or so, we're going to revisit Mark's calendar, see how he's doing with his habits, listeners, so please tune in. Because really, I think the book really focuses on, not really trying to just massively overhaul your life. It's really doing marginal gains, as we started this podcast with,
right,
and just doing a little bit at a time to maybe improve your life and to, maybe change your leadership.
Just improve 1% every day. Oh, you're looking at so I have to do the outro now. Are we done?
That's all I have.
Well, you're in charge of the outline. You got to give me the high sign that we're done. It's like cut. Okay, fine. With that, I've been given the high sign that we are done with this particular podcast, so I could go start making some new habits. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic... Ooh, I can't even talk today. And together, let's say that clearly now. And together, we are the dynamic duo of law. I can't even read today. This is what happens on a Monday afternoon. So remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that forward button on your cell phone. I know it's there. And forward an episode of this podcast to your friends. I've been doing that a lot lately. So I've been pestering my friends. Listen. Be sure to visit our website at successfulbarrister.com. I was on it the other day. A brilliant website. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, McKinley.
I know. Thank you, McKinley. And be sure to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.